Lumineers, welcome back to our Intro to Lorcana series. DJ and I are going to be talking about Amber deck combinations today. Something that he very specifically has been playing since set one. I think he took a very small break and played a little blue steel or sapphire steel rather, like for half a set or something. But he has mostly been playing Amber Steele's song for the majority of his Lorcana career. I almost said life, but that would be weird. Career. I've played quite a bit of Amber everything. I think I've tried a lot. So has DJ. We've kind of tried to mix it up a little bit. But we're going to be talking about kind of what Amber brings to some of these decks and how kind of the synergy works out. And we're very excited. We are going to start with mm, uh, more infamously a DJ's Steel song list that he changes all the time, if I can find it.
Small tweaks for the meta.
Small tweaks, just tiny ones.
Yeah.
Tiny ones based on the meta. Alrighty.
Yeah.
Is it still gonna show up? Okay, cool.
So this is the most recent iteration of my list, and I know Amber Steel songs. It does go more towards the traditional Steel song, not so much like the new aggro versions that are not necessarily Steel song builds, but just Amber Steel in general. So mine, my playstyle has always been since set one more on the mid range side, with I like having the options of taking it late game and just controlling the board and out resourcing my opponent. But then also, as you can kind of see, still have to respect those control decks that will beat you down in the late game, and you have to go fast early to be able to win those matchups. So, particularly Amber in the Amber Steel deck, Amber is the quintessential singer color in Lorcana. So I don't believe even with the new set reveals of the set that will be coming out probably by the time you see this video, it'll already be out with the new set. Not going to try to pronounce the name of that set, but
Arcasia Island, I think, is
yeah,
what it is.
Arcasia's Island.
Yeah.
Uh, but Amber is the only ink color that has the singer characteristic that we went over in our previous videos when we went over the different keywords. And that's really what enables Amber to be the best pairing for this. As you can see, almost all of the songs in this deck are steel cards, and those amber cards being the Cinderella Singer 3, which is a one cost character that can sing all of your three cost songs as early as turn two. That's what really enables the songs to be even more powerful than they would be just being sung by a three cost character naturally. We have Cinderella as our one drop singer three to cheat out those songs. Ursula Vanessa, which is a two cost singer four. So then we can sing everything outside of A Whole New World. And then Ariel and Gaston, who are both singer five. So you kind of see a trend with our Amber supporting cast in this list and in just Amber Steel songs in general. And then you have your more aggro package where you have Daisy Duck and Lilo, which I always kind of call them necessary evils because I'm not a huge fan of using them, but they are a necessary evil when there are those decks that will just beat you down in the late game and stop you from ever gaining a single point of lore later on. So you need those characters to be able to just get out the gates running. Uh, Rapunzel is just absolutely, I mean, one of the best cards in Lorcana that's been printed back from
Has
set
been
one.
since set one, will
Yep,
always
it's
be, I
amazing
think.
card,
Yeah.
amazing character, amazing ability, quest for two lore. So even when you need to, she can squeak out some lore with a respectable five willpower. So she's harder to take down, and she's also her one of her own best targets for herself of being able to heal up because of her five willpower. So being able to draw without needing to play a whole new world, which draws 7 cards for both of the players. Rapunzel allows you to heal up one of your characters and draw up to 3 cards yourself. So that can be very impactful, even if it comes down to, oh, I use Cinderella to sing Let the Storm Rage On to deal 2 damage to my Ariel or Gaston, anything that can survive that 2 damage, and then Rapunzel, the 2 damage for an additional 2 cards. That's a common play there. So you can see a lot of the synergy within this type of deck, and also the amount of thought that has to go into every play that causes your games to go very long if you're me. Uh, and so, uh, yeah, overall, amber as a color doesn't have really much when it comes to affecting the characters on the opposing side of the board outside of power manipulation. So a lot of amber cards, they may have like support where you can buff the power of another character, usually your own, but also potentially your opponent's, because one of the only banish spells and abilities in amber is World's Greatest Criminal Mind, which you can see 2 of them in my deck, where it banishes a character with power 5 or more. And then there's also a Minnie Mouse that has that same ability. I believe it's a super rare from set, was that 5 or 6?
Which
Uh,
one?
the Minnie Mouse has
Think
the,
it's set 5. I love that
yeah,
card. I wish it was better, but it's like uninkable
yeah,
and
it being unequal
it's
kills
so
it.
bad. And
But
it's
it's
like
like
a
World's
one
Greatest Criminal Mind.
five. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
it's like World's Greatest Criminal Mind on a stick. And
Mhm.
then I think there's a uninkable action that's not a song that will banish a character that has been challenged this turn. Last Stand or something like that. It has like Raya on it.
Yeah.
So Amber doesn't have a lot to deal with characters as much of banishing them, and that's where Steel comes in with their Steel song cards in this, which deal damage more often. So overall, love this deck. Obviously, I've played it since set 1, and gonna continue until it can't keep winning me champion mats or anything like that. So if that happens, then that would be when I do try to move on from it. I do want to try to branch out to some other decks, but this would always be my
Tried
my
and
go-to.
true.
Yeah.
Alrighty. Yeah, I feel like you guys are gonna see a little bit of a pattern here as we kind of like move through a lot of these decks. And the next one being mine that DJ doesn't like hate, but also is not quite his play style, but it is like very much my play style. Um, this is actually I told Corey that I wanted to play. I was like, I want to play Doc, I want to play Mines, and I want to play Daisy. And Decandio, the original name for this list is actually Diggy Hole, Decandio, but this is the pre-Kita version, which I personally kind of prefer. I'm not a huge fan of Kita. A lot of times, especially when I'm playing when I was playing this deck, I don't think really ever got to 5 ink. If I did, like I was playing out just like I was like spamming the board. This is like very this kind of more so shows the aggro side of Amber, I think. With the because I know when I played, I don't know if you did it in set 1, but set 1, the Lilo, the 1/1 two quester, she was a mandatory in every Amber deck for like 2 sets, and that like kind of this deck kind of like yeah, this deck really like kind of brought me back to that. We only play the four Cinderella for singing, specifically for the Amber side, for the only 8 songs that we play. And it is of course, Let the Storm Rage On, lets you draw a card, so it gives you a little bit of draw power aside outside of the dock. And then the Strength of a Raging Fire, which is really, really good for this deck specifically, because you are spamming. It is very opposite of DJ's deck in the sense of the 4 Lilo is a mandatory and the 4 Daisy. And I think that's like kind of one of the things that I liked about this deck the most, is that it really kind of pushes and shows like the aggro side of Amber while also still giving the Rapunzel, which is crazy to think about, but I think every single Amber deck, you're playing a mandatory 4 of Rapunzel. Like if you're not playing Rapunzel in your Amber deck, I feel like that's just like sacrilege.
Yeah, I feel like
Like,
the only one that doesn't would be probably yellow or amber amethyst hyper aggro,
yeah,
because you usually
maybe.
don't go to 4 ink too terribly often. If so, you're just like goat.
Because almost every card in that deck is like a
It's like
1 drop to a 3 drop, and like
yeah,
that's it. And like you don't never need anything else. And like those are like the
nothing survives to be
exceptions.
healed
Yeah, yeah. Like I think everything has like 2 health or 3 health at most, I think. Some
outside
of
of
them are
Daisy.
playing Genie, but like it's like I think the highest like health character you have is like the fox that you're bouncing to like kill something on your or banish something on your opponent's board. But um this deck definitely more so focuses on staying very low to the ground, which is what I like. I like very fast decks. I want to put cards down and turn them sideways. I want to win as fast as possible so I can go have a snack. Like that is generally like my mindset. But this was probably Corey says all the time, he's like, you should play your diggy hole deck again because you were like so good with it and you were happy and you like just kind of like beat people and then got up and got to chat. And I was like, yeah, I don't know, like I've been wanting to go back to it, but I feel like so many people were teching like against it after DeCandio won in at CCS. He won the I think he won the 10K. I'm pretty sure he won the 10K
Yeah, he did.
at CCS. Yeah, and then like everybody was like teching against the Calhoun and the it was just stressful.
Yeah, it was one of those situations where people play it and then you kind of have to just know what its game plan is. And once you know what
Yeah,
the game plan is
it's
and you
very
don't have
easy.
that shock factor, it isn't as much of a threat. Like, don't get me wrong,
Yeah.
it's still a good deck. But like into traditional Steel Song, I loved
Oh,
seeing Diggy Diggy Hole on the other side because I
yeah.
hate mirror match Steel Songs because it's
It's
usually
so
who goes first wins.
dragged. Yeah.
Because you just have more removal without having to exert your characters. Now, when you played against Diggy Diggy Hole or any Steel aggro matchup like Amethyst Steel, if they Pete on 3, Pete on 4, Pete on 5, it does suck. But
Yeah. They
uh,
have to have
yeah, they
it.
got to have it. And if they have runner, 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 then I guess they deserve it.
Yeah.
Um, so, yeah, I think it's definitely a good deck in its own right. And I think it does better into like the like red blue matchup or sorry, sapphire ruby matchup
Mhm.
because of its aggro nature here and its ability to not refill a Ruby Sapphire player's hand with a whole new world. So it
Yeah.
has a lot of skill expression in do I go the Rapunzel route or do I go the Doc route when you have both in hand? Because Doc
Ugh,
is
I
gonna.
hate that.
I know it's such like
It's so bad.
that's your biggest like if for those of you that know the meme of where there's two buttons and the guy's just like sweating like wondering which button to press, that's exactly what this is.
Yeah. It's I always that is definitely like I think one of the only tough decisions in this deck that I ever found was like, oh man, I have the Rapunzel and the Doc. Do I Rapunzel? Do I Doc? And then I'm just like, I'll ink the Rapunzel because it's inkable, and then I Doc and like it's so crazy because every single card in this deck is a 4 of, right? So like 9 times out of 10, you're seeing exactly what you need, and I think that was like one of my favorite things about this deck too.
Yeah.
But I think that it's also kind of like falling out of favor a little bit. Steel Fossa, which is another steel or amber steel deck that I don't think we have a list for it, but is a very honorable mention. Steel Fossa is kind of insane as well. Uh, the Mufasa, everybody, I feel like at this point everybody knows what Mufasa does. It's 3/3 quest for 2. When this card is banished, flip over the top card of your deck. If it's a character card, you may play it out. I think that's the wording exactly almost. But that deck is also insane. I played against it at this past set champs, and Mufasaing and like banishing a Mufasa and then flipping over a Tinkerbell is like hurtful when you have like your characters that all have like need one more damage to like be banished. So yeah, no, I think Steel Foss is also a very good deck. I don't think I could pilot it though. Like I just don't think it's my play style because
Yeah,
it's a little more top heavy.
yeah, it's
Yeah.
definitely a lot more, and I definitely see. And so, and for those of you watching, this kind of conversation is what one of the, I say without getting too, emotional about Lorcana, but one of the amazing things about Lorcana is the dichotomy of two similar decks of like your more traditional steel song, like that I usually tend to play, versus the more aggressive version, both the same ink pairings, even a lot of the same common characters they're in and actions that are in each deck. But the fact that another Amber Steel iteration of the Steel Amber Mufasa build can strike a little bit of worry in the more aggressive builds. Whereas for me, I like seeing Amber Steel Mufasa because they don't have the songs that can deal with my characters that are readied, and I can just be zapping out all their characters. And that's one of the downsides to like a character centric deck like
Mhm.
Mufasa is. We'll go over another ink pairing of that does have Mufasa in it, as I played a Amber Ruby Mufasa deck with actually some pretty good success very early on at the first CCS event on Charlie's Collectible Show,
Mhm.
and I made day two and I lost by winning in for top eight uh, narrowly in a game three at 19 lore. So and I had never played the deck before in my life before that day. That I didn't practice it or anything, and that was the one of the main things is it takes away your agency of I can't interact with you as much as you can
Mhm.
interact with me, and if that I don't win and go high and tall enough with my characters, then I can be overrun by just hey I don't have the tools to deal with your characters.
Yeah. I
But
think it's
there,
crazy too, cause like I think we talked about this like we've talked about this before, that up until I think this past set or last set, Shimmering Skies. I know it was actually this set. Amber Steel was only referred to as Steel Song. Like that was like the name for Amber
mhm,
Steel. And now this set with Diggy Hole, Steel Fossa, and even like other like variations that maybe aren't so popular or haven't won like a big event, like people are really starting. Obviously, we're getting a lot more sets, so like it makes it a little bit easier. But it's crazy to see since like as both of us have come from playing this game since set one, the first chapter, and now it's like I'm like, "Oh, we can't just say, like, Steel Song anymore." Like, it's not Steel Song, it's Diggy Hole, it's Steel Fossa, like, it's Amber Steel in parentheses other name. Like, so
yeah.
it's kind of crazy to see the evolution of Amber. Like, it's definitely it's getting there.
Yeah. Now Steel Song used to be synonymous if you're playing Amber Steel, it's Steel Song, whereas
Yeah.
now it's Amber Steel, and then there's Steel Song is now just one of the viable
Mhm.
Steel Amber decks. I still almost said Steel Song is one of the most one of the viable Steel Song decks, and I was like, wait, Amber Steel decks.
Yeah. It's funny because like I remember whenever cuz like we do obviously stream on Twitch for a lot of our bigger events too, and like I'll try to always put like the color combination, and I'm like, "Oh, I can't just put like Steel Song anymore, or Amber Steel." Like I have to like tell them like, "Oh, are they playing Diggy Hill?" Cuz like people will ask in the chat too, like, and I'm like, "Crap, like I got to figure out actually like which Amber Steel deck they're playing so like people know." Um but yeah, no, it's kind of it's awesome and I love it because like Steel Song was like the only thing that Amber Steel was referred to as for
Yeah,
5 sets. Like
and
that's crazy.
and that was the case for most decks, and I feel like until
Mhm.
recently where you
Yeah.
had some rogue decks that were the same ink pairing but a different deck completely, and now you're seeing those be more fleshed out as Ravensburger adds more cards with each set
Mhm.
to kind of support some different play styles. Even if it's just like a slight tweak, you kind of get this like evolution of where you see like a spectrum of different amber steel song builds that kind of have a fluctuation between what people think is good and into what meta, what else is good right now. But then completely other branch offs in the evolutionary tree where it's almost unrecognizable, other than maybe you can see there's a couple cards that are shared that are just overall generally powerful. Rapunzel.
Yeah. Yeah, it's crazy because like we were looking at like lists of like the top cards in Lorcana, and Rapunzel gifted with healing has literally, I think, been the number one card for Lorcana since that one. Like it like hasn't changed. Like maybe the prices like faltered a little, or like a new set came out, so like, oh, this card was hype, but like she has held the top spot even through all of that. Once all the hype dies down from a new set, like she's still number one. Like because
Yeah,
that card is absolutely just the best card.
I don't think I've ever seen Rapunzel gifted with healing ever hit anywhere in the $20 range. Like
Yeah, no.
it's always been 30 plus. Like it dipped a little bit, I say like a month or a couple months ago to like I saw it at like 31, 33, and that's probably like its lowest ever.
I think that was too because a little bit of because the DLC version was getting bought out, and like like that one just kind of like settled, and then like once cards like settle, they like drop a little bit. But like now the DLC versions, like have you seen the price? The DLC version's insane now because
I was
like
gonna say,
the new DLC promos are hopefully coming out and being released soon. Fingers
yeah.
crossed we get a DLC announcement soon, guys.
Right? Yeah, we need more content, more tournaments, and yeah, no, this was like before the big boom of the DLC promo where it was
Oh,
still
really?
sitting at like 110, but it went down to like 33,
Oh,
31.
wow.
It was before the CCS that DeCandio won, and then naturally, anytime the
Mm.
big event tops, it's because it was coming off of Ruby Sapphire, and so
Yeah,
that's
Ruby
when
Sapphire
other
was.
decks start to be like, "Oh, you can't play this deck anymore because this deck's dominant." It's like, well, you're
Mhm.
not playing a room of, everyone else playing your one counter. So,
Yeah.
and even if they are, Decandio had a different version of Amber Steel that was able
That
to
played
win.
very well into
Yeah.
it.
So, just goes to show you, market prices tend to fluctuate, and try to pick up those cards that you need to finish out your collection, especially staples that are historically not going to go anywhere. Like Rapunzel, I don't think unless they very much power crept her, she'll probably never be out of like
Rotation.
contention and viability. And
Mhm.
power creep, for those that aren't aware, is when a card is essentially released that is like a better version of like a 2.0 version of a previous card. So if you had a card previously that was like, hey, this is a 3 cost 3/3 character with this ability, and then they release another one that's pretty much the same thing, like a 3 cost 3/4 that's pretty much the same ability, then you're like, okay, the other one's just now defunct and not playable.
Mhm. Yeah. So, leading us in to our next deck, we're gonna show Dicandio's Mufasa
Mm.
list.
Candio seems pretty good with, how much we've already mentioned his name
I
today.
know. He's very good at deck building. He is. I will
Yeah,
say that.
yeah.
Uh,
So,
another what is it? Another name for the Mufasa Ruby Amber Mufasa list is Lily Fossa. That's also a very popular list. Humble
mhm,
and Daniel and Lily, if you follow them on Twitter, I think they all kind of like created like the Lily Fossa list. I'm not exactly sure how Lily Fossa became its name, and I don't remember exactly who made the list, but that is also a very popular Amber, Ruby, Mufasa list.
Yeah. You'll hear a lot of kind of, I say, almost like pet names for decks that will kind of stick, and that'll kind of be the name, like Diggy Diggy Hole. It's like I don't even know if it's a
Baja
reference to
Blast.
something, and yeah, Baja Blast with it being Emerald, Sapphire. So
Hmm.
yeah, kind of learning those terms in addition to all the
All the others.
man, I have to learn so much to learn a Lorcana to know what. Oh, well,
Hmm.
I was playing my Lily Fossa deck. I'm sorry, what? Oh, my Amber Ruby Mufasa character centric build.
Yeah.
So yeah, so this is one iteration that we saw. Amber Ruby Mufasa is not extremely, uh, it's a represented, especially recently. It's never been a like top tier deck. It's always been seen as kind of a fringe deck that is like you have to understand it to know that you're not going to get surprised by it at a tournament because it can catch you by surprise if you're not expecting it. But it is a very, and I don't know if you would agree with this, but I say it's a very like linear gameplay because it's all characters pretty much. So it's
Yeah.
very much telegraphed what you're going to do. Oh, you played Mother Gothel, who does 3 damage to itself. I wonder what your end goal is when you're keeping it protected by ready keeping it readied. Oh, you probably want to play Rapunzel to heal those 3 damage.
Yeah.
Oh, you played Doc or Gaston. You want to cheat out some bigger characters because that's another aspect of Amber that we kind of haven't touched on yet. We've touched on how Amber is a big singer centric ink color. It's also a healing centric ink color, but it also has not your traditional ramp of ink ramp of gaining more ink and resources, but it can cheat out the ink cost of characters in the form of like Doc and Gaston. And there's a song called Zero to Hero, which can reduce the cost of playing another character. So it's almost a like a pseudo ramp card
Hmm.
to kind of cheat out those. So that's another, I say, fairly prevalent aspect of Amber that you'll see in a lot of things because there's that what 1 drop Pluto that's
One
uninkable. That
drop Pluto, yeah. And then there's also Just in Time that allows you
yep,
to play a
yep,
5 cost character on turn 3.
yeah.
So
It's a
yeah, I
3 cost action, and it's just like, hey, put a 5 cost in
yeah.
play. 5 cost or less. Which if I
Yeah,
have a 5 cost, I'm
specifically
put.
5 costs. Yeah.
Yeah,
Like I'm
yeah,
playing that 5 cost. I remember I
yeah.
played that in my Amber Steel list whenever I was playing the 5 drop Maximus bodyguard. So
Oh
that was,
yeah,
yeah, it was crazy actually. It was super good. But
yeah. So that's kind of honestly where this kind of almost swaps out the singer package of Amber to put in your kind of cheating out other characters. Even uh, Doc and Gaston, they cheat out bigger characters. So turn 3, you play Doc or Gaston. Doc on quest can reduce the cost of your next character by 1 this turn. Gaston can exert to reduce the cost of your next card character by 2 this turn. So that's another aspect of Amber that can be utilized in your deck building as you start not having to take, oh, what is everyone else playing, oh, let me just take their exact list. You can take that kind of game plan and run with it, like the person that I imagine saw, hey, I can combine Amber and Ruby way back when and take uh make use of that reduced ink cost nature of Doc and Gaston. uh Another one with Amber, there's not a ton of like, I say, card draw outside of a lot of healing cards, like the Julieta Madrigal, which is like a lesser Rapunzel essentially
yeah, it's
because it
like
only
if you
ever draws you
heal
like
a
max
damage.
one,
Yeah,
uh,
draw a card.
one card drawn,
Yeah.
and then you have Rapunzel. You have Pongo, which is actually very useful in a character focused deck because you can once a turn, if I'm not mistaken, is
Pay
you
2.
pay 2 ink and then you reveal the top card of your deck. If it's a character, you can put it into your hand, and as you can see, you will it's essentially
Hit a character. You're hitting a
2
character.
cost, draw a card,
Yeah.
but show your opponent.
It's
Uh,
I was actually gonna mention this, that's why I zoomed in a second ago to look at the Pongo, 'cause, so Amber doesn't have a ton of, like, draw per se besides, like, the
mhm,
Rapunzel and the Julieta, but it does have a lot of it does have a lot of search cards that say if like, choose a character. So, we have look at this family, we have the Tinkerbell that I think that one actually no, that one looks at the top 4 cards of your deck,
mhm, it'd
pick a
be our guess.
character. Yeah, be our guest. So it has a lot of it is very, very focused on characters. Um, and I think that's like another like huge aspect of Amber specifically is that it's very character based, very healing, very like oh I want to cheat out characters. So it's kind of like synergized in that way. Like you're searching for the characters and then you're cheating the characters out and then if they take damage you're healing the characters. So
Yeah,
it's I actually surprisingly never put that together until just now while we were talking about this, but like that's actually like it is very it synergizes very well, I think, with a lot of other colors because of that, because it has so many properties that like other colors like need, like oh I need to find a character, or oh I need to heal a character, or oh I need to cheat a like big cost character, especially in this scenario being paired with Ruby, where a lot of its good characters are like Sisu 8 drop, Medusa 6 drop, Mulan realistically you're wanting to shift that, not hard cast it. But Mulan is a five cost shift. Maleficent's a 9 drop, so it's definitely synergizes very well with a lot of different decks because of the different attributes that Amber itself has.
yeah, and even going even past the healing and finding characters out of your deck, it even goes even further beyond, to the banished pile because you have a lot of essentially reanimation, uh,
Oh yeah, Perdita.
recursion with, Perdita. You have, the quintessential My Boy Hades from set 1 that
Yep.
play for 4 costs. You don't see it much nowadays because there's power crept. You play 4 cost Hades. He's a only a 3/2, which is not a great stat line for its ink cost, and it's uninkable. Uh, but it was very powerful because when you play him, you can immediately look at your banished pile and take a character and put it back into your hand, which is extremely powerful as that's essentially a draw a card of your choice that you've already used and your opponent's dealt with, specifically a character.
hmm
And you have a lot of those. What is it? Revival, the Mother Gothel art.
Revive.
Or, yeah,
Yeah.
is it just revive? Yeah.
Yeah, it's revive, and then we have Underworld, which is
Yep.
if you quest with a character, you can pay 3 to
Pay
bring a
three
character
ink.
back. And then I think with the new Pride lands, the more recent Pride lands, not the one where if you have a prince there, but the new Pride lands, it's an inkable 3 drop, I think. If you have 3 characters there, you can like in the quest, I think in the quest or something, I can't remember exactly, but it has to have 3 characters. Like you can bring a card back. There's a healing action that says heal up to 2 damage off of a character and pull a character from your discard back to your hand. Like it's yeah, no, it's there's a lot of recursion in Amber as well. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's
So
really good actually. It's got a
yeah.
lot of
So
synergy with a lot of different decks.
if you like character based decks and you don't want to fiddle with actions, I mean, Amber, Ruby, Mufasa, and there's other Mufasa builds. Uh, there's honestly a Mufasa, and I know we've talked about this build, and we've talked about Mufasa, and we haven't really even highlighted him in his own deck right now. But being a 3/3 that when he's banished, you look at the top card, and if it's a character, then it gets put into play exerted. So it honestly feels terrible, like Tanya, you were saying, when a Tinkerbell comes off, the big Tinkerbell, or God
Mhm.
forbid, it's happened to me before where I killed a Mufasa and I was going to be able to then kill something else. And granted, this was a misplay by me when this was actually my first term I ever played in Lorcana. Uh,
You remember
it,
that far back? That's crazy.
yeah. And then it hit a Rapunzel off of the Mufasa,
Oh
and then it healed the
no.
character I was going to be able to banish. And I was like, Cool. Or the lottery winning ticket where you just hit Maleficent Dragon, and so
Oh yeah. Or the
usually in
sisu.
yeah, usually you're not even getting to that high of ink total to hard cast those characters. They're Mufasa targets.
Oh yeah, for sure. It sucks. I also, fun fact, in case you guys didn't know, if you flip a Rapunzel on like your opponent after you banish a Mufasa, they get to draw if they have a damaged character on the field. So
Hmm.
like feels bad.
Yeah, because it gets put into play. Its ability of gets to trigger and go into the bag, and so you have a lot of options in this deck, like
Yeah.
Madame Medusa, Sisu, Surfer Stitch, Maleficent Dragon, Rapunzel. Yeah,
God, I would hate to flip a Maleficent Dragon or a Sisu. Like I could pretty much like feel like I could deal with like most anything else, but a Maleficent Dragon, a Sisu, or a Medusa just feels bad. Like
yeah,
I'll deal with the Rapunzel, but like
yeah.
don't kill my character.
You just have to hope it's like a one cost Stitch or something.
Yeah. Give him something bad.
Yeah,
Uh, Alrighty. That is honestly a really good deck. I feel like a lot of people like tried it out in the last few sets. It was definitely a tester for sure.
yeah.
We're gonna
That
swing a
I was gonna
little bit.
say
Oh,
one
go ahead.
last thing on Amber Ruby Mufasa, and again, this is a deck that I've played before as well. It's also very, I say, nice to play as a beginner too, because you don't have to have all the fancy cards in there. But because it's very, I say, like I mentioned earlier, kind of linear, it's great to kind of get character functionality in Lorcana down of like all the characteristics of you're pretty much you have all these different abilities, which there are maybe like actions that do those abilities, like banish this character, like Dragonfire. Well, that's just Maleficent with that Dragonfire on a stick, essentially. And so
Mhm.
you can get a lot of those with like a 2-for-1 value. Granted, they're probably going to cost more than if it was just the action because it has a body attached to it. But it really is nice to kind of have those just character on character synergies and get those down, and then you can kind of already know a lot of the other actions because there, if I'm not mistaken, there are a ton of abilities on characters that the name of the ability is actually the name of the action. Like
Oh
there's the
yeah.
LeFou, the red LeFou that readies a character that his ability is called Fan the Flames, and then there's a action
Action
that's called
called Fan
Fan
the
the
Flames.
Flames.
That's the
So
same exact
you
thing. Yeah.
learn all that all at once.
Yeah. That's a, oh my gosh, yeah. It's so funny. Because I learn so much when we do these videos. I think a lot of it is because like sometimes I don't like pay full attention to like some of the cards and stuff. But anyways, we're gonna swing into another aggro version of an Amber deck, courtesy of Gaming Inkwell. We just kind of found this um on Dreamborn, but this is actually a very, very popular list. Oh my gosh, when I went to Vegas and I was in all those side events, all I saw was freaking Amber Amethyst, and I was crashing out because it was like, it's so hard to beat. Uh, and I think that was before that was set five. Was Vegas set five or set four? Five?
I'm terrible with timing.
I don't
I can't even
remember.
tell you when
But it was
Vegas was.
before some of these cards, and it was insane. I hate when they befuddle back my Cindy or my Daisy, but this deck um focuses a little bit more, not focuses a little bit more, but kind of digs into a little bit more of some of the bodyguard aspect of Amber. Amber is huge into bodyguards as well. Got to protect the singers, obviously. If you don't have a banish spell, you're not getting rid of my singers. But in this case, it's protecting all of the low cost and very low willpower two questers like Lilo and Piglet. Um, and with the new set six. We're in set six. Yeah, set six.
Yeah.
What set is this? Azurite Sea. We got the Simba, and it pairs very, very well with the bodyguard Simba because its effect is when this character is exerted, ready all of your other characters. So you just play bodyguard Simba in bodyguard, and then you shift if you assuming you have enough ink, and then you get to just re-ready all of your characters, and nothing can get banished via challenge. So I actually like love this synergy of the Simba, and I don't. I played bodyguard Simba in sets 1 and 2, and I think 3, and I did not think about shifting the big Simba onto the
So
little Simba.
that happened, what was it, on the ICL? And I was like sitting there like, oh, he can or no, it was some stream that we're
We were
like a
watching it.
big
I know what you're
and
talking about.
and I was like, yeah, he can bodyguard the Simba and then shift on it, and that counts as it being exerted at the end of the turn.
Yeah.
And everyone was and then they did it and everyone was just losing their mind. I was like, oh, I didn't think that was like groundbreaking, but yeah,
I don't
there's
think anybody thought about it because like bodyguard Simba kind of fell out of favor for a long time. That's like that was
this
literally the
was the turn
wobble
one, turn two.
combo.
Is like, tell me if
Yes.
you've heard this one. Turn one, Lilo. Turn two, bodyguard Simba.
I'm getting at least
Yeah,
four to
Lilo's
six lore
going
out of
in.
Lilo. Just hope your opponent doesn't lay down a turn 1 Captain Hook and you cry.
Yeah, which and then at
Bye
least
bye,
it
Simba.
trades with the cap or the
Yeah.
Simba. And if you're going first, this list here is interesting because I'll be honest, this goes a lot higher ink cost than almost any Amethyst Amber Hyper Aggro deck that I've personally seen. Uh,
With the 4
where
cost.
Yeah, where 4 cost is like the max, and usually
Yeah.
that's just Merlin Goat. And even then, I've seen them sometimes not run a 4 of Goat because you just want to turbo out everything immediately. And then even I know Amethyst Chromacon was big to
Mhm.
just say, I don't care if you have a bunch of cards because
I'm
I'm
turning
going to
sideways.
win. I'm going to
Yeah.
win before you can use your cards.
Yeah.
And sometimes, I mean, this deck's worst matchup is Amber Steel Songs, and even then, it's not an it's people say is an auto loss into Amber Steel Songs. I don't think I've ever lost
No.
to this deck, but you can lose to it because there have been times where
They get
I s-
close.
they get close, and it becomes stressful because you're like, I just need to answer everything that they play, and then
Mhm.
I win. But if I cannot answer everything they play, they're going to win before I can stabilize. So even
Or if
in
you have
its
like a high cost character out and and they have a Baloo, all they have to do is swing into your high cost like your like 3 strength character and they win the game or something. Like it's insane.
yeah, and so it's never to be, I say, disrespected as a deck because
Yeah.
as an Amber Steel player, yes, am I happy to see them play this hyper aggro deck against me? Yes, because like I feel like 90, well, so far I've had 100% win rate, but 90, I can feel confident that I have like a 90% chance of winning that match. But it's
I
still
think
scary because I've had games where they got to 18 lore and I've dealt with all their characters and they have no cards in hand. And that's a card I don't even see in here actually. But if they drew Gathering Knowledge and Wisdom,
Oh
that
yeah,
gains
yeah.
2 lore off the top. And I've been like, man, I have no agency in this because they could just win off the top with no characters, no cards in hand.
I will say I think the reason so like something that's like really interchangeable in this deck specifically is the 2 Simba and the 1 Chernobog is either 2 Simba and 1 Chernobog or it's 3 Gathering Knowledge. Um and that's kind of like interchangeable. I was kind of surprised when I saw this deck list actually that they were playing the Tinkerbell and not the Fox. I think that the White Rose and the Merlin Goat are obviously like mandatories, but like you see a lot of Fox as well to give the deck a little bit of like control into like helping it to like helping some of your like smaller characters maintain like their board presence because your foxes are getting rid of like some of the bigger characters.
Yeah, and that's where I've seen not necessarily the box, but because usually I always say and tell people, for the most part, if you're playing this deck and you are ever challenging an opposing character, you're going to lose the game. And
Mhm.
while that's not like a hard fast rule, that's for the most part, you know you're in a bad spot if that's what you're
If you
doing
have to start
because
challenging, yeah.
and if you need to start challenging, you're probably not winning the game. Uh,
Yeah.
and that's where I've seen people utilize the snake since it is one cost less, and it essentially acts as to re-ready or
Mhm.
protect your Lilo or Daisy
Bounce
if
a
it's
Leela
about
back,
to.
play it back out.
Yep. So it's readied and ready to quest again and sneak out another two lore. Uh, Snake being a 3/3 can do that
At least
as
do
well to
damage.
at least
Mhm.
take 2 damage and still live to quest again. Or if it needs to, it can eat a smaller character that would otherwise eat your Lilo. Uh, and another one being essentially the same card as Lilo, but Maleficent biding her time is another one that I usually see in these lists that are very heavy on the lore questing, whereas this list looks to go a little bit higher, and which makes sense why they have a little bit less of that and more of the 12, well, pretty much all three of the Amethyst draw one drops of Turnbox Followers, Diablo, and Magic Broom. It's
Like
a very
they're
fast deck.
literally turn 1 Lilo or Daisy, turn 2 Chernobog Diablo, or another 2 quest, or turn 3 you cry a little bit inside because they probably have 6 characters on the board if you haven't dealt with any of them.
Yeah. And then they
But
hit
this
you
deck
with
is
the Exodia
really
mat.
this deck is really, really good. When I say low to the ground, this is exactly what I mean. Like they have 4, 8, 12, 16, 21 drops. 8 of them are 2 questers, and the other 12 of them are drawing them a card most likely to give them their 2 questers. So it's like these decks like this like do really well against decks like Ruby Sapphire because turns 1, 2, and sometimes 3 they're not playing like a character out or they're getting their first character out in turn 2 or 3, but it's not enough to like do much, especially if you have like a Daisy out. Like it's yeah, no.
Yeah.
I love decks like this that are like super low to the ground.
Oh gosh, that leads great into what I was just about to say. Um, God dang it. Oh, I hate this. Um, well, what I was going to say is decks like this are also very beginner friendly
Mhm.
because the game ends much earlier, whether you win or you end up losing. Uh, those games will go very fast, and there's going to be less decision points that you need to make in the game. And a lot of the decisions are going to kind of be fairly self-explanatory of like, oh, I play this, oh, I quest because that's what my deck wants to do. I'm not really interacting much with my opponent. I'm pretty much playing my own game of turning sideways. And so you don't have as many decision points, which leads to less times where you have, oh, okay, what is the optimal play? And you have to play a percentages game a lot of times in those decks. Like for like Amber Steel songs, I have a million like decision points of do I challenge, do I keep my character ready, do I Rapunzel this, do I storm my own card to then Rapunzel it rather than storming my opponent's character to remove it. Uh, those are all up for debate as far as what is the best play because I don't have all the information of my opponent's cards in hand, so I don't know what I'm going to draw into. And decks like these, because they end earlier and it doesn't have a lot of interaction with the opponent, you have less decisions that you need to make. And that can kind of hone in on, hey, the decisions I do make, am I making those right calls? Am
Mhm.
I trading too often with this deck? okay, I need to tone back on my trading then to kind of learn my deck's play style, and that can help you grow as a player. Because anytime you lose, it's not going to be 100% win rate for any player out there. You're going to have tournaments where you don't perform as well as you think you should, and growing from those losses, figuring out what did I do, not always just saying, oh, well, I didn't draw well. Like, oh, if I would have saw XYZ cards at these precise moments I needed them, I would have won. Uh,
Mhm.
oh, they just drew, the nuts on me 3 times, all 3 games, and I happened to squeak out 1 game, but I couldn't do it multiple times. So trying to kind of think back through what did I do wrong at those specific decision trees that present themselves in the game.
Put card down, turn sideways.
Yeah. And that's why I was like, oh, you're like, I love these types of decks. And I'm like, these types of decks, you don't have to make a lot of decisions.
Sometimes, honestly, I'm not gonna lie to you guys. Sometimes it just be like that. You just don't want to make a lot of decisions. Cause like I play a lot of Lorcana throughout the week, and sometimes I just build a deck. I literally on Monday I built uh what did I build? Steel Sapphire Steel Knights. Cause I was like, put card down, move to location. I also just wanted to see if it would work. It didn't do terrible. Uh, but yeah, no. It sometimes it's just fun also to like build decks like that and see how like you play with it, because it's really interesting. Something that we actually talked about, we recently had a team meeting, and we were all talking about how we needed to play different decks, because it's just also really good to know how to play these different decks, even if you do prefer, like DJ, like the higher skill, lots of thinking, must figure out every single move kind of decks. It's good to know how these other decks play. So like building them and just like having some fun at a locals or something is always a good idea, because then it helps you when you're interacting with them on the opposite side. Um, so yeah.
Yeah.
The
And
the
hopefully you can
last
play a bunch of Lorcana because I cannot, unfortunately. So that's why I tend to have one deck that I mainly learn.
so this is just another version of aggro. Um, well, there's a lot of aggro versions of Amber. Okay, I just wanted to touch on a couple. All right, there's also another version that's actually Amber Emerald. I couldn't find like a good list that like I don't know. I just like couldn't find a list that I liked. Don't judge me. But it also plays Kita, and I kind of wanted to touch on it with this one. So this one's kind of very much like the Amber Steel. It plays a Julieta to allow you to draw cards. I love that it has the Alice, because then it gives all your other characters ward. This is a very ward heavy deck. Not really, actually, but everything has a really big butt. But meaning willpower. Sorry. Um, and then it
Whatever.
plays into kind of like the healing aspect a little bit with the Rapunzel and the Baymax gaining the lore there. We have Ward with the Alice, the Wendy Darling, and the Duke Whistleton. Still have our bodyguards. Lots of two questers. So something that is really, really good with this Kita, um, also with the Diggy Hole version, is it gets if you get to 5 ink and you play that Kita on that turn, it essentially gives all of your characters, assuming that your opponent doesn't have like a Maui on the board or something, it gives all of your characters an extra turn. So it's I don't want to say it's like Pete, but like it's like a pseudo-ish kind of like Pete. Like it's gonna stop your opponent from challenging into your characters, which is so amazing. And with the Emerald Amber version, they play the singers obviously. So they have Cindy's, they have Ariel. I don't know if they play Ursula. Like that's kind of like a sometimes they'll play like at a two of, but then they'll play Akita and then they'll play Under the Sea. They'll sing the Under the Sea, and it goes crazy. Like you were worried that your characters were going to get challenged. Just kidding. You drew the Under the Sea off the top and you're singing that thing. You know what I mean? Like it's that, and like Kita can be such a game changing card. Um, I just for some reason like cannot get her in my hand at the right time. So like I hate playing her. But it's just kind of like one of those things though where like Kita is an absolutely game changing card. Another aspect ish of, well, I guess we kind of talked about it, but like the Kita, the Queen, we have a song that like drops all of your like the opposing characters strength by like it's like -2 strength or something like that,
Yep.
where it's essentially
The
giving
Woods
like,
or something.
yeah, it's like it's a Frozen song.
Yeah, has Kristoff on it, and then
Yeah,
there's,
it's
like, Painting
Kristoff.
the Roses Red that minuses
It
power.
and lets you draw a card, right?
Yep.
Yeah. So it does also that, whereas like it's like again like protecting your smaller characters from being challenged, or like your bodyguards, keeping them alive to essentially then keep all of your small characters alive. So there's lots of synergy with Amber. I love Amber.
Yeah,
Probably my one of my favorite colors aside from Sapphire.
same, and I'm not biased.
I couldn't tell.
Yeah. Uh, so yeah, that's where I was even gonna pop up a picture of the old Office meme of it's the same pic. They're the same picture. Uh, you see like the kind of similarities with slight tweaks in a lot of these decks, where I'm pretty sure you've seen like Daisy and Lilo in most of the lists, Rapunzel in most all these lists, Lilo in the more aggro leaning, well, full aggro decks, uh, and then you have
Wait, are we
had
talking
Baloo in
about
the two hyper
baby
aggros.
Lilo or zombie Lilo?
Oh yeah, sorry. Uh, yeah, Zombie Lilo, the one that where she's been permanently
Surfer,
banished.
escape artist.
Um, Yes, Lilo Escape Artist has been in, I'm pretty sure, like, almost every list, and
Yeah.
then, yeah, all these themes that we've talked about with Amber of, like, the power manipulation all kinda coming together in the decks, that are built around that, so this one highlighting as, Tanya was saying, like, the bigger willpowers, in this one, so it's like a different version of the Amethyst Amber aggro list where it goes a little bit higher, has a bit healthier characters, and then hit the nail on the head where I was going to mention as well. Uh, but Tanya's exactly right, where Kita's essentially the character stasis of like protect my characters from challenges in the fact that you're going to reduce all characters on the field by on the board by 3 power until the start of your next turn, whereas Pete in steel protects from actions. So yeah, you have those tools in specific ink pairings that a lot of decks will utilize, like the Amber Sapphire Hyper Aggro list utilizing the Kita, the Emerald Amber list, like you mentioned, using it for specifically to actually be essentially a board wipe for your opponent's
Mhm.
side of the field, which is extremely backbreaking for a lot of decks. And that's not
It's at a
even a
pivotal time too, generally, because like you're going turn one Curse Merfolk, turn two Ursula, turn three uh Ariel, and then like whatever you do on turn four, then turn five. Generally, I don't know about y'all, but I don't got a lot of cards in my hand by turn five, depending on what deck I'm playing. So it's like if you're playing against like any deck that is not very cannot very easily refill their hand, you've changed the game for them.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and
crazy.
the threshold you need to be over to dodge that board wipe,
Mhm.
all 5 power or below characters after Kita hits the board and Under the Sea is sung or played are going to the bottom of your deck. And so how many characters do we have we seen in any of today's builds? Granted, a lot of them are more aggressive, but even
Maleficent.
in the higher yeah, I was like Maleficent Dragon, is a
Even
7
Sisu
power.
goes to the bottom of the deck.
Yeah, big Sisu
Yeah,
is not so big anymore.
yeah.
And yeah, so it's extremely powerful combinations that we've seen in multiple ink pairings with kind of the same themes, but just different flavors stashed in.
Got the flavors, the flavor jams. But yes, so that is kind of like Amber in a nutshell. Um, all of those decks that we showed up today, there's a little QR code on the bottom. I don't know if it's going to be on the right or the left. It's on the bottom of the page because sometimes this is reversed whenever I start editing it. But you can scan the QR code and it'll take you directly to the Dreamborn link, or you can type it in to the Dreamborn links at the bottom of the picture. You can type it into your web browser, um, and you can check out all of these deck lists, and they're really fun to play, especially the Daisy Dock something
Yeah,
turbo.
and don't let those decks that you find, whether they be the ones that we posted here just as examples, or the ones that you find on Dreamboard or Ink Decks, all the amazing resources that you have in this game, whether it's ones that are just posted on anybody's Facebook group, because there's the Lorcana Facebook group where people post their lists. Never be afraid to ask someone for their list. Your more competitive players may or may not, if they're getting ready to go into another tournament, may not reveal all information about any tweaks that they are wanting to do for their decks, and that's not out of any sort of malice. They are not villains. They're a lot of times just focused on winning a very big tournament. So don't be, I say
Discouraged.
discouraged by that. And use those deck lists that you do find as a framework for your version of that deck too. Don't be afraid to,
Make
try
changes.
out different changes.
Mhm.
You may make a bunch of changes and realize, oh, I now have a completely different deck from what I started from, and then kind of tweak from there. Um, yeah, because a lot of it has to do with your play style, how you like to play, and overall, there may be optimizations. Be open to feedback, but don't take, even if you were to ask me, like, hey, what should be my 60 card deck for these two ink color combinations? You shouldn't take exactly all 60 cards potentially that I tell you just because I told you that these are the 60 I would play.
Yeah.
Play around with those ratios, and let's talk about the different tech cards that you are wanting to possibly put in. Like you saw, I'm pretty sure it was the list that I sent in, um, where I had actually started trying out that Sonic Warrior aerial. And I'll be honest, like, it's exactly how I expected it to be, where in steel matchups, it just made those matchups even easier. uh, and then it was just ink in a lot of like red matchups, where I don't want a heavy 6 cost character that just gets like ice block sea suit or something like that.
Medusa
Ice
off the
ice block
board.
plow. I brought yeah, Medusa is so dumb of a card, but
I will say that just kind of piggybacking off of what DJ said, we Corey and I go to a lot of locals. A lot of our team goes to like similar locals, and we kind of interact very heavily with everybody. And I remember specifically after NACC, after CCS, after any DLC, because everybody's watching those, right? Like some of our locals will literally pick up those deck lists and then like, I don't know how Ed played this. I don't know how Din played this list. I can't play it like that. And a lot of it is, you guys have to remember that these people are playing these lists day in and day out for weeks. They know the ins and outs, they know the matchups, and they know their play style. They know how they think throughout any matchup that they're playing, and it's probably going to be different than you. So you cannot take every single card that they put in their deck and put it in yours. Something might not work for you. You might have different ideas or different thoughts. So don't be so stuck on, one list, or, oh, so and so played this list or so and so played that list and they won. I think it was crazy what Ed, after NACC, he was like, if I run into Amber Steel, I lose. I built this deck for the red blue matchup, right? Or the ruby sapphire matchup. He literally said that. And I think he did play one Amber Steel and he lost to
Yeah.
them 2-0, I think. And he straight up said that, and like people still built the list and then like were getting upset because they were losing to the Amber Steel matchup, and I'm like,
Yeah.
he straight up said it. So you have to take like a lot of deck lists, especially ones built specifically for events like that, DLCs, NACC, stuff like that, with a grain of salt. Um, and put your own twist on it. Like, learn, deck building is a huge part of the game, and I think that a lot of people, net decking is, there's nothing wrong with it, but like DJ said, take a deck list and use it as a framework, because nobody's deck list is going to be exactly what you play or exactly your play style. So it's always good to just kind of like take that time and do that. So
Yeah. And one thing that, like, for example, at the House of Cards, shout out them for being our sponsor, amazing store. Uh, we were at their set championship, and Luca, on our team, he was talking about to me about my Amber Steel list that I was playing, and he was like, why do you have Big Cindy, Cinderella Stouthearted, the 7 cost shift 5 character in the deck? Like, what do you want her in the deck for? Like, what matchups are you finding her beneficial in? And it was his kind of way of saying he doesn't believe in the card as much, but he wasn't necessarily saying, hey, that's a
you should
bad
take it out.
card.
Yeah.
You should take it out. He wanted my opinion on why do I feel like I have that, and why does that justify its slot in the deck? Because that's, I think, how you should kind of look at it of
Hmm.
think about that card and its synergies with the deck, and think about it into every other major deck that you are thinking you're probably going to be playing against, and how does it benefit you in that? Is there a card that benefits you more in those matchups? And for me, I like having, just that option of that big Cinderella, because big Cinderella in a lot of games can just win you the game outright, which is, um,
Prepper
I
bus,
mean,
baby.
yeah, I was like, all right, you have to deal with this resist 2/5/5 that can attack your ready characters if I've sung a
Hmm.
song. Um, so just having that option, and I think that's a good way to look at tweaking those lists, because it's not wrong to completely cut Big Cinderella, like Luca did, where he didn't feel that it was necessary, and it might have not have made an impact in his matches. So it's really awesome to kind of just like analyze and talk through like your rationale of why cards are in the deck, and not everyone will agree with you either. So uh, be prepared for that.
be, be prepared for what? No, I'm just kidding. But yes, as always, like DJ said, thank you to our sponsor, House of Cards. We love them in Winston-Salem. Um, if you ever uh want to throw a deck list out there and get some feedback, you can always also join our Discord. It'll be linked below. And we're super excited because we're going to be doing all of the different colors of decks. And we're going to be talking about them, and we'll have different people from the Ohana and friends, and we're very excited to bring you guys this content. We're also going to be doing a noob novice pro version of where we normally do the bracket, and that video will be posted tomorrow for you guys as well, of set 7. So get excited for that. We are, I think, 3 days from release when this video posts, so it'll be super excited. or super exciting. But yeah, if you guys have any feedback, you guys want to see anything specific, please just comment below. And thank you again. We'll see you guys next time. Bye.
Peace.